Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
So today we have a distinguished guest, Amby Burfoot, the 1968 Boston Marathon champion.
One of the more interesting things about Amby's victory is how young he was. I think, Amby, you were just 21?
Yes, I was 21 when I ran Boston. It was my third Boston. I ran, let's see if I can get this right. I ran as a freshman at Wesleyan. I was injured with a broken metatarsal my sophomore year. My junior year, I was in killer shape, but I ate apple butter for my pre-race meal and spent too much of the race at several porta potties along the way. And then senior year, I finally got it more or less right.
And Amby, that year you had a duel with a fellow who I believe was a former member of the military, maybe a U.S. Marine, a really tough competitor.
Yeah, that was Bill Clark from the Marines, who was a fantastic runner. We did battle at the second half. What was interesting, perhaps, is the fact that we both knew each other from previous races, and in my mind, we both knew that he was going to win because he was faster than me. You know, he could run a decent mile in track time, and I couldn't. And every race that I was in with faster people, which was way too many races, I got outkicked at the end. So I was pretty desperately depressed all the way through the Newton Hills when I couldn't shake him. I'm telling the story very quickly now. And what happened was he was one of those guys with a bit of a prancing stride. And that was the kind of stride that really locked up on the downhills at Boston. So he quadriceps cramped on the downhills. And I staggered because I had run my ass off going up the hills and had nothing left. But his cramps were worse than my stagger, so I did hold out for the last 5 miles.
And Amby, you had a great coach, Johnny Kelly, the only member of the Boston Athletic Association to ever win the Boston Marathon, which he did in 1957. And he got you on to the trails, and you were one of the United States top cross-country runners in the national collegiates. You were sixth twice. Do you think that played a role in your win, having to duke it out that hard?
Well, having the opportunity to go to a race, which is now known as Division I Nationals. It wasn't called that then, but in fact, that's what it was. And to say that a small-town runner like me finished sixth in that race, which everybody now knows is super competitive, that was pretty cool that I was able to go 2 years and do that. I've been thinking, you asked about John Kelly. I've been thinking about John Kelly and Jeff Galloway a lot recently. As you all know, Jeff recently passed. And how incredibly lucky was I that, I walked onto a high school cross-country team, and my coach, John J. Kelly, was inarguably the top distance runner in the United States for a decade. I mean, he was it, period, if you look back on that historical gap. And then I leave him and I walk onto a college team where the track and cross-country coach, J. Elmer Swanson, great guy, almost made it to the big leagues as a first baseman for the Detroit Tigers. First time I walked into his office at Wesleyan, he was chewing tobacco and he had a spittoon in the corner of the office. And he was chewing tobacco into that spittoon, which is the grossest thing a person can possibly imagine, or very damn close to it. So there's spitting Elmer. But then I walk out to cross-country practice my first year, 1964, and there's this guy on the team named Jeff Galloway. I had no idea who he was or anything about him. But it turns out that he, like me, is inflamed with a passion for marathon running. Mine came from Kelly, obviously. I guess I don't know where Jeff's came from, but he had already the previous year won the first Atlanta Marathon, which was called the Peach Bowl Marathon then. Benji would know that kind of stuff. But Jeff had already run a marathon and won it because basically everybody else dropped out, which is what happened in those days.
It was a tough course, and people, the Peach Bowl, that was a hard race. It was definitely, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my understanding is a bunch of laps and a lot of hills on all those laps, and so
it was 2 laps.
Anyway, so Jeff is already a marathoner, and I'm coached by a marathoner, and I like to say we spent the next 3 years and we ran 1 million miles together, and then I like to joke that it was probably closer to 700,000. But we ran together every day for 3 years, and Bill was there towards the end of it. And it was just remarkable that I went from a Kelly mentor to a Galloway who I was equal to as a runner then. In fact, I beat him more than he beat me in serious races. But he was a mentor too because he was a year older, and I looked up to him and I followed him around, and we trained together every day, and it was just a marvelous, rare circumstance that led me to that point.
Amby and Benji and Ron, do you think that, Jeff came from a military family during the Vietnam War? He was actually on a boat in Vietnam and everything. And do you think this kind of, and he started a school, the Galloway School in Atlanta, kind of, a life where you have to have some rules and regulations?
Well, I don't think he actually started the school. I think that was his parents, but yeah.
That's what I meant. His dad was a military guy.
Oh, you're talking about his dad. I thought you were talking about Jeff.
Yeah, his dad. And I think, and Jeff became kind of that way. He wanted like an orderly life, a focused life, a determined life. And that's the way he was. And I just think that after he made the Olympic team, and with Frank Shorter and Jack Batchelor as teammates, that those stories are just mind-boggling. Could that happen today? I don't know. Too much money involved, and I don't know what. But Amby, you're going to do Boston again this year. You're 79. You'll be 80 in August. You'll be the first person, I think, to run a marathon over how many decades?
This was something that I discovered 7 or 8 years ago. I like to play around with marathon stats, and I think I was studying Old John's career. And Old John, I think he dropped out of his first 2 Bostons. He didn't actually finish a Boston until he was, I don't know what age, might have been 30. Anyway, I started realizing that Jeff and I had each run marathons in 7 consecutive decades of our lives because we were both dumb enough to start as teenagers. And that's the key aspect of it. You got to run one as a teen because you're probably not going to run one as a 90-year-old. So I told Jeff about this 7 or 8 years ago, and it just went nowhere. And then Jeff had his heart attack, and that was a substantial blow. And so I assumed he had completely forgotten about it. But then last summer, when he turned 80, he got in touch with me and he said, Amby, I'm training for, the Honolulu Marathon. I want to run a marathon at 80 and become the first person to hit 8 decades in a row of his life. And I was all in for it. I wanted Jeff to be the first. He was a year older than me. There was nothing I could do to catch him. And I figured, let's celebrate this incredible guy. So I agreed to go to Honolulu and run with him. And I knew it was going to be, I don't think I know how slow it was going to be. I suspect if Jeff had run, it would have been 7 or 8 hours because he was mostly walking. But then, as many people have heard, he had that funny household accident on a day when the New York Times was there interviewing him and videotaping him for stories they were putting together. I think he tripped on a rug or a chair or something and went down hard and cracked his kneecap. Whatever that means, it was enough that his doctors told him not to fly to Honolulu and not to run a marathon, obviously. So I was out in Honolulu without Jeff, which made me very sad. And I was also sick most of the time I was there. The day of the race, I don't think I got out of bed. I had a real kind of flu thing. And it was a stormy, horrible, windy day in Honolulu. So Jeff wasn't there. I was happy not to run a marathon then. And so now I'm kind of on the top of the list of people who might be able to reach 8 decades in a row. And I'll hit 80 in mid-August next year. And a month ago, I was contacted by a fellow who claims that he's run 7 decades in a row and will turn 80 next November and go for his 8th decade. So now I'm in a race with this guy. I got to beat him. So that means I have to run a fall marathon. And then I want to go to Boston next year, which will give me 8 consecutive decades in the Boston Marathon specifically.
Do you have a plan
story?
You have a plan for your fall marathon?
Say it again.
Do you have a plan? I mean, you have a marathon picked out for your fall marathon.
Yeah, I'm going to the high bidder, Benji. It's the only right way to do it.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
No, there won't be.
You see, he's going to pay you the most to run?
Yeah. Right, exactly. It's about time I got paid, don't you think?
Well, that brings a question, because the three of us made money as we ran. Did you ever really make any when you were racing? I mean, it started about the time Billy became good. That's about when money started coming into the sport.
It's a good question, Benji, and I'm going to get to it. First, I was kidding, obviously, when I said I was going to the high bidder in the fall. Secondly, to my memory, I've never won a dime in a road race. I've won merchandise prizes, which we, in the old days,
that's when I started. That was what we got a lot of too.
Yeah, I've got more toasters than any person can possibly use in a lifetime, because that was a big prize at road races. But what I got paid for the year that I won Boston, actually, was Dave Costel in his physiology lab was doing experiments with Gatorade. And he had a little bit of money from Gatorade, and he had 5 or 6 of us out there for the experiments. And he paid us as lab rats, or whatever they were called, to run on the treadmill 3 days in a row. I had to do 20-mile runs on his treadmill 3 days in a row in Muncie, Indiana, one day without anything, dry, one day drinking water, one day drinking Gatorade. Of course, I felt best drinking nothing, because that's what I was accustomed to, and I felt worse drinking Gatorade. But he told me the actual results were the opposite. And I think I got $250 for each of those 3 days, which was a ton of money.
Yeah, back then that was good. So what was the order? Because I would think that, 3 days of running 20 miles on the treadmill, there's going to be some residual fatigue that's also going to interfere with the research.
You are a scientist, Benji, and so Dave did give us 1 day of rest, I guess, between the second and third days. But you're right, and there's no way he could have, or anyone could have calibrated for that.
At least he didn't do what Ken Sparks did, which is he had a bunch of graduate students run on treadmills doing different drinks, and for like 2 hours, and then at the end of 2 hours they pumped their stomachs.
Oh, Sparks was in the lab when I was running, and that's exactly what Dave did, because the main thing he wanted to do was to figure out if we were able to actually absorb what we were drinking, rather than have it just sit in your stomach like a tidal wave while you're running, sloshing around.
So you got your stomach pumped?
Well, that wasn't what the procedure. I don't know what you imagined by stomach pumped. What do you imagine?
Well, that's, I don't know. I've never had my stomach pumped. I don't know.
Okay, I'll tell you exactly what it is, and you have to imagine this carefully. Dave takes a plastic tube and he shoves it up your nostril and somehow guides it down your throat. And then he says, and you're gagging. It's horrible. And he says, Amby, just relax. Just pretend you're eating pasta. Just pretend you're eating, spaghetti. And he shoves this thing down into your gut, and then he suctions it out to see how much is in your stomach.
That's exactly what I was thinking it was.
That's not worth $250.
Yeah, exactly right. And we did muscle biopsies then too, so that was fun. I think I may hold the world record for slow twitch muscle fibers, at about 97% or something.
You and Alberto Salazar.
Is that what Alberto was?
Something like that, 92%.
Yeah.
I went to his lab too, Amby, and he was great. The studies that these scientists did on marathoners, runners of all sorts way back. And there's the fellow in Dallas. What was his name?
Ken Cooper.
Ken Cooper, who helped Americans get onto the roads, along with the coach in Oregon. Bowerman, yeah. So big changes, But Amby, one thing is, Benji and I have run into health issues over the years, but you seem to have dodged serious health issues. Is it because you were a vegetarian for a long time or something? How did you do it?
The older I get, the more I think that, it's all luck or perhaps genetics or something. I don't know what I've dodged. I haven't had symptoms or serious problems for sure. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. I have a particular measure in the coronary arteries of my heart, which would make me totally dead if it were not for the fact that I had been a runner all my life, which has allowed the arteries and additional arteries to open up and allow adequate blood flow in my heart. But so, on a scale, most people have a measure of 0 on coronary artery calcification, or maybe 50. Mine is 950, which is it's basically clogged arteries that have hardened. And hardened is better than soft. If they're soft, they break off and you have a heart attack or a stroke. If they're hardened, they tend to stay there and you get away with it. But it's not a good thing. You'd much rather have a 0 than what I've got. But anyway, I haven't had a symptom from it. I blame it for the fact that I've slowed down more than I think I should have slowed down. But pretty much all of us have slowed down more than we think.
Slowing is. Where are you these days in training pace and race pace?
Well, training pace is almost 12 minutes per mile. That's run walk. That's 4 minutes of running and 1 of walking. And at Boston, if I break 5 hours, it'll be a good day. So,
I'm way behind you.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad somebody's behind me. What's amazing is that I'm in a digital group with Bill of a bunch of 75 and 80-year-old runners, and there are a ton of people out there that nobody's ever heard of who are way faster than we are.
Well, Kyle Hefner is I think he's 71, and he just ran a 140 half marathon, basically untrained. He said he started running, a little bit more like a month before. Wasn't doing any speed work. He ran it in training shoes, and it's sort of 140.
Wow. I got to look that one up for sure. Yeah. Well, Kyle's always been a specimen, and he's he's one of those. True. He's got lean muscle mass. I have 0 muscle mass, and for that, my genetics were not good. I think I was lucky orthopedically. Because I haven't had many injuries and I've only had 1 minor knee scraping. But in terms of muscle mass, I'm at the bottom of the heap.
Yeah, you're really thin. The vegetarianism, when did you start that?
I basically picked it up from Kelly, who was a pescatarian, I guess you'd say. And for many, many years, I was a ovo-lacto vegetarian. And then when I had kids, they started leaving the plate half full after they were finished with their chicken fritters or whatever. I started eating a few of those, and then I started eating salmon occasionally. And now I'm back to about 99% vegetarian.
So I'm similar in that I'll eat chicken, turkey, and salmon, and I get blood tests, every 3 weeks, and my protein's always low for some reason. It could be just due to the chemo, but at any rate, so I eat a little more protein than you probably do. I mean, animal protein. But yeah, I gave up red meat back in 2003, and I haven't missed it.
I've had one nutritional experiment in the last month, which I'm almost ready to say has made a difference for me. And I get sent tons of nutritional products, and you can take an infinite number of pills and they never make a damn difference. You can't even tell that they've done anything, or at least I can't. Caffeine excluded. Caffeine works. So I've been on the creatine thing for the last month, and I gotta say, my push-ups are getting easier. Not that I do a lot of them, not that I've done this scientifically, but I just feel a little stronger. In the last couple of weeks, I've actually started running better than I've run for a year or so.
I'm wondering if the coming Boston, though, is motivating you some.
Oh, God, yes, of course. I try to train for Boston, and that's very figurative more than literal. I've got 116 and maybe a handful of 12s that I've done in training. But I still do tempo runs and things like that in my training. I even do 800-meter repeats, and they've just been a little bit faster the last 2 weeks.
Oh, that's good. It's
maybe. We'll see.
If you want to talk about supplements, Kyle will give you an earful.
And he'll say, I assume that they're all worthless?
Oh no, he has all kinds of things that he thinks are just wonderful. And
really?
Yeah, and I'll hook you and him up and let you talk to him, because he has. I mean, that's what his research has been about, and he told me about several things I should be taking, and I couldn't keep track of them all. Plus, I'd have to talk to my oncologist before I could add anything, just to be sure it didn't interfere with it.
Of course.
Amby, I think one key to yours and Benji's and Ron's and most people success is the people around you. Your family. I think your mom was a tennis player. Your brother Gary is a very good runner. I raced against him in high school, I know. And but throughout your lifetime too, Benji, you and Amy worked together doing races across the country and everything. She is a runner. Maybe you were a runner first. Not sure what the order is.
Yeah, I'm older, so I was first.
Yeah. Same with me and my partner Karen. And so what roles what do you think, Amby, on that, and Ron as well?
Well, I was very lucky at, Runner's World for 20 years. That was like running central, and it was at Rodale, which was a unique company. And George Hirsch was our boss, and he was 110% supportive of everything. So that was a special time of my life. I must admit, at that point, I was so much more magazine editor, writer, boss of the office that my training was low through all the years when I was at my peak working at Runner's World, and I've gotten it more together the last decade or so since retiring and moving back to my home area in Mystic, Connecticut. So I got back to Mystic, and here we were in the second running boom, and I thought, oh man, I'm going to start doing all sorts of things in Mystic and turn Mystic into a Boulder or Flagstaff or Boston or something. And it turns out that this is a great little running area, but there simply isn't enough mass population to do anything on a large or significant level. Our biggest races are maybe one a year, around 1,500 or so. So I learned some population demographics when I moved back here. I don't have a lot of training partners. My best training partner is a 75-year-old woman who lives across the river in New London. She's very, very good, and we run together a lot.